Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please take a seat to start our session. We are a little bit late, but our session will last for 1.5 hours. But here the panelist is different than mine. Oh, really? So the title of this session is Fake News, a topic no doubt all journalists globally are aware of and keen to know more about. It is now seen as one of the greatest threats to democracy and free debate. My name is Dr. Farid Ayar. For the Federation of Arab News Agencies, I have been in this role for more than 40 years. What's the matter here? I would like to introduce to you our wonderful 5+1 speakers for this session today. Mr. Thomas Kent, Associated Professor of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University in New York. Mr. Muhammad Jalal Al-Raisi, Executive Director of the Emirates News Agency WAM, the official news agency of the United Arab Emirates. Ms. Anna Johnson, Europe and Africa News Director at Associated Press, based in London. Mr. Siddhartha Dubey, Professor of Journalism at Ashoka University in India. Mr. Eric Wishart, member of AFP Global News Management Team and is based in Hong Kong. Mr. Alexander Karachenko, Director General of Ukraine News Agency, National News Agency. Let us begin with our first speaker, Mr. Thomas Kent, who is a specialist in journalistic ethics and the dangers of fake news and disinformation. Mr. Kent has written and spoken widely on ethics, press freedom, and disinformation. His articles have been appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many other publications. He will now talk to us about how we can prepare for the next wave of fake news. Please, Tom.
Thank you, Farid, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you. My subject today is a grim one, a look ahead to the future of fake news and what news agencies can do to combat it, if anything. I say if anything because news agencies alone have no magic bullet to fight fakes. But if there is a broad, significant effort by our societies to build respect for what is true and to do battle with what isn't, then news agencies can play a significant part. For instance, if media literacy programs train citizens to read carefully and critically, then those citizens will welcome fact checks by news agencies. But unless there's an underlying interest by citizens in the integrity of the news they consume, efforts by news agencies will fail. People will think agency fact checks are simply propaganda for whatever interests they believe the agency represents. So, what are the new impending menaces we face? Others at this conference have already mentioned the terrifying prospect of deep fake video, fabricated video clips showing people, maybe even heads of state, saying with their own authentic voices things they never said or doing things they never did. Even experts will have trouble telling if these videos are real or not. Already less sophisticated false videos and fake audio are doing substantial damage. The danger is not only that deep fake videos and audio can be used to trick people in specific situations. They're also a broad attack on the news media as a whole because they threaten to undermine the credibility of the genuine images and sound that media outlets produce, especially in investigative journalism. I should add that we are witnessing a democratization of false news in the sense that more and more people are learning to create and distribute it. Software to make fake video is spreading rapidly. So we should expect to see false stories and images from more and more places, especially if social platforms allow the distributors of fake news to continue making so much money from advertising. Last year, a fake video on social media designed to look like a BBC newscast reported that a nuclear exchange had broken out between Russian and NATO forces in the Baltics. This was a 3-minute video clip. It was marked with a BBC logo. It looked like it came from a BBC studio, and it could have spawned a worldwide crisis. Evil actors who hijack news organization names and credibility create an extraordinary danger to agency brands, to society, and to public safety. And let's remember, there's almost nothing news agencies do that disinformation artists can't imitate. Many agencies these days are setting up fact-checking sites to fight disinformation. In response, creators of disinformation can create their own fact-checking sites to sow suspicion toward real fact-checkers. Now, podcasts and virtual reality and augmented reality are becoming more popular. So we should expect disinformation using these tools as well. So what can we do? As I said, news agencies alone can't save the world, but they can take significant steps to protect themselves and the public. First, I would recommend that everybody on your staff needs to be sensitized to the danger of fakes. Much fake news these days is political, but don't expect that to last. Sports departments, business departments, entertainment news departments all need to be aware. For instance, in coming years, we should expect deep fake videos showing football goals that in fact were never scored. Next, every news agency needs an emergency plan in case someone posts a false story under its brand. That could be on social media or by hacking your own internal distribution network. You should assume, of course, that this will happen in the middle of the night and on a holiday. So who at your agency will be available right at that moment to immediately restore the security of your network? What 24-hour contacts do you have at social networks to shut down your hijacked feed? Suppose someone starts circulating false stories with your name on them from their own social network accounts. How do you stop those stories from being believed and massively shared? Meanwhile, if you've lost control of your feed, how will you publicize the fact? How will you warn the world that false news has gone out under your agency's name? It's embarrassing, but you may need to ask your biggest subscribers and your biggest competitors to sound the alarm. Can you reach all of them immediately? The danger posed by the fake story will increase with every second you wait or fumble around looking for phone numbers and email addresses. In more normal times, how can you judge the accuracy of very well-made photos and video that seem sensational and newsworthy, but may not be true? Often they gain enormous attention, and of course, you'll be under pressure to make a quick decision on whether to use them or not. Not many people have the skills to analyze clever Photoshop work or deepfake video. The best experts may be in another country, and the middle of a crisis is not the time to try to find them. So you should have such people lined up and ready. Agencies need to be constantly monitoring social networks, looking for false stories and conspiracy theories, especially when major news is breaking. Your reporters must be aware of the false narratives out there so they don't spread them by mistake. Some fakes are so dangerous that they need to be exposed even at the cost of spreading them further. The more information sources you can monitor, the better, especially since some of the most harmful narratives circulate these days not in the relatively open landscape of Twitter and Facebook, but in the closed messaging groups like Telegram and WhatsApp. Speaking of messaging apps, many news agencies haven't yet focused on them as ways to distribute content. One reason is that it's hard to make money on WhatsApp or Telegram. But these are increasingly popular media worldwide, including as tools to spread hate speech and disinformation. News agencies should recognize these apps as gateways to enormous audiences that cannot be ignored. These audiences must come to know you as reliable sources of news and respect your stories that expose disinformation. So what else can agencies do? Obviously, the more accurate your own reporting is, the less you can be accused of creating fake news yourself. When news media make big mistakes, they hurt their own credibility. When reporters interview people, they can't let them say untrue things while they just hold the microphone. Journalists need to challenge any statement that's untrue. Every agency also needs an ethics code, so there's no doubt about its rules for sourcing, verification, and attribution. A few decades ago, new employees joining news agencies quickly assimilated the agency's ethical principles. These days, new staffers may not understand why these principles are so important and may actively resist them. That includes thinking that truly fair, balanced coverage is impossible. Being properly balanced is not easy, but it can be done. If you believe that nobody can dispassionately report the facts, you undermine one of the key functions of news agencies. One of the best ways an agency can fight fake news is to make it a major subject of coverage. Assign one reporter, or more than one, to focus entirely on the fake news phenomenon, how it works, who's behind it, the dangers it creates. Journalists talk about this problem all the time. We talk about it every time we have a conference. But many ordinary readers have no idea how clever the purveyors of fake news are and how effective deepfake videos may be. Few stories these days are as important as the threat to the world's information bloodstream. It should be a top priority subject for every news organization. Responsible journalists and news agencies are the most powerful barrier to false news. If you can be marginalized, if your credibility can be destroyed, then the creators of false news can replace your agencies with information brands of their own that they completely control. In fighting falsehoods, story by story, you save our institutions, you save our societies, and you save yourselves. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your excellent speech. Now, our second speaker is Mr. Muhammad Jalal al-Raisi, who has extensive experience of media and communication in the United Arab Emirates and beyond. Previously, he served as a head of the media office for the UAE development project in Egypt and as a media advisor for the UAE media delegation for Egyptian affairs. He will now discuss how news agencies can be empowered to deal with rumors and gossip. Please, Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farid, and thank you first for our colleagues in Bulgarian News Agency for hosting this important Congress meeting, and I think it will be very informative for us. And as the professor mentioned, there were very important things that he said in his speech, and I would like to highlight more maybe our work as a news agencies and what we've done in terms of like a case study in United Arab Emirates News Agency. And in terms of the changes that's happening around in different sectors, especially the technology that we have and new channels that people can reach the news from social media and other things, that give us bigger challenge to be all the time faster and credible and also giving exactly the facts in the right timing and also in the right professional way. So, and one of the important also things that my colleagues mentioned before, Professor, about the media literacy and how we should be part of this and helping also. So I would like also to mention this maybe in my speech. One of the important things that we have to highlight while we are working in news agency is the speed. When we come from the point of, let's say, long life working only with the media outlets, now we are working with media outlets and also with the audience, broad audience through websites and also through different social media channels that we have. That will cause a lot of problems if we are not on time and we are not giving the facts in the right time. So it's important exactly to study and do your research and start working in developing your channels as a news agency that you can reach more and more people around you. In United Arab Emirates, we have almost 200 nationalities with different languages and different background, different religion, different people who are coming to UAE to work and to have their chance to see different kind of culture or different kind of news at the end of the day. So doing this and looking after those people, we have to be ready as an Emirates News Agency to provide all those means for those people who are working with us and also for the world. And as we know, in the Middle East, our countries are a very important partners from business point of view and also political and different kind of things. So we have to be ready for any kind of emergencies or any kind of things that people will be looking after as a news point of view. So all means that we have to be faster, we have to prepare our staff to be more efficient, to be more effective, and to be more proactive while they are working in their job on the field. So we started of thinking how we can speed up, let's say, the process from the beginning of the field, the people who are working, reporters working in the field, and make things faster to reach it out to the audience and also to media outlets. So we start working and design application that people who are working in the field, they can write their news, upload their photos and videos immediately, and also send them to the transmission station, and after this it will be out immediately. So that's make things faster and also give us the opportunity to be fast in replying to any kind of fake news. Other things is to make bigger network of relationship between important, let's say, organization, authorities, different, partners who are in the country, try to give them faster access to us, to give them more ability through the technology, through the, focal points that we have, and make things easier for them to reach us, and also easier for us to reach them. So we created a portal special for our stakeholders that are part of our sources as a news, and we have exchanged the facts and news directly with them, and try to take the advantage of being very quick and fast. The other thing is that we try to do, it's to have a more ability and stronger to distribute our news. So we had another portal that are specified for those news agencies, media outlets, very quick and faster. And we added around 13 languages to be part of our languages in news agency, to give all the people who are living with us in UAE, most of them, and also around the world, the news in their languages, which will be easier and faster also to know the facts and to see what is going on. One important thing that we are also trying to all the time to keep in mind, that we have to have, when we are taking any decision, we have to think about how we can make those decisions based on research. So we are monitoring, and we have like a KPIs about the trust of the public in our news agency, and also trust of the news around us, and try to monitor exactly what are our ranks when the people go to the digital, what are our ranks there, so they can reach us, and how far we can go with this. Those things can, when we try it, let's say 2-3 years, we found that the rumors are getting less distributed in United Arab Emirates, with being very proactive. That's from Emirates News Agency, and also other partners in media outlets. So we try to highlight this, and we try also to connect ourselves with the sister agencies around the world to give them the answer. Also, what we try to do in Emirates News Agency, that we've been very proactive in building relationship with other media outlets who are inside UAE and also outside of UAE, to try to give them the the focal point, and also to give them the opportunities to see if they would like to have any news from our side, or even we can help them to reach officials in the country with the easy access that we can get there. So this is also give us a good opportunity to distribute the news and try to reach out. All those tools that we built, we found out that it's helping a lot to decrease the fake news that we have in the country. And the people build a very good trust on news agency account, and also some other media outlets that are operating in United Arab Emirates. So basically what we've done, I think it can be a case study that can help many other news agencies to be participating in this way and trying to reach more and more people. And other thing that can help us, it's as we are today together in this meeting room, that we can work together to checklist our, what we receive as a fact or even fake news together as a news agency, sister news agency, and we can ask immediately the news agency from the country or ask them for help, let's say, to get the fact in the right place. This is basically a very important things, and updating our system immediately all the time. It is also some important things that we try. training people in different sections that we have in the news agency, how they can fact check the fake news or to see what is the things that's happening. One of the projects that we've done also in Emirates News Agency is working with the Minister of Education, trying to help them in their project, which is like media literacy, and try to help them how to fact check, the fake news, and try to help them how to train even the people in their center. Those are important things that I would like to highlight. If there will be any question later, I can go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed, about your nice speech. Now, our next speaker is Ms. Anna Johnson, who recently moved to London to take up the role of Europe and Africa Director at the Associated Press. Her previous role at AP as a news director of US West was one of the agency's biggest and most critical leadership roles. She has covered a variety of stories for AP, such as the Iraq War and the Iranian elections, when she was based in their Cairo bureau. She will now discuss the importance of accuracy and credibility in today's world of journalism. Please, Anna.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, and good afternoon. Tom talked a bit about the grimness, the grim outlook in terms of fake news and what we can do as news agencies to try to counter that. So I'll talk a little bit today about what we're doing at the AP to do our best to fight misleading and misinformation, disinformation, false information, whatever you want to call it. All right. Oh, hold on. I got to turn it on in order for it to work. There we go. All right. So accuracy, credibility, or objectivity, and credibility. These three words are at the heart of the mission at the Associated Press, where I've worked for more than 15 years. And I believe they really are at the cornerstone of our discussion today on countering false and misleading news. A survey by the Pew Research Center that came out only about 2 weeks ago was really interesting. And I mention it today because it gets at the responsibility we have as journalists in fixing the problem of false information. The survey showed that half of the adults in the United States considered fake news a major problem, no surprises there, and 68% said it affected their confidence in government institutions. Interestingly, misinformation was cited more often as a major problem than sexism, racism, illegal immigration, and terrorism. But here's really the relevant part for journalists. While some governments have pressured tech giants like Facebook and Google to get rid of disinformation on their platforms, a majority of those surveyed by Pew, 53%, said journalists have the biggest responsibility to reducing made-up stories. It's obviously a big responsibility for us, but one that I believe, and I think we all believe, we absolutely have to shoulder because it cuts to the center of what we do and why we do it now more than ever. At the AP, we're taking a multi-pronged approach to countering false information. We have specialty fact-checking teams, we utilize new technology and encourage innovation, and we continue to place a premium on good old-fashioned reporting and shoe leather journalism. I'll describe a few of these efforts in more detail. Fact-checking and accountability reporting are the core of our mission and embedded into everything we do. But that's not enough. In recent years, we created a dedicated fact-checking team that do specific fact-check stories that hold public figures to account and knock down other misinformation. Like other news organizations, we have also focused on fact-checking information shared widely online that's not necessarily about public figures, and have been one of Facebook's news partners. Beginning this year, we expanded our efforts with Facebook to fact-check video and also started focusing on Spanish language text, photos, and video seen by US audiences on Facebook. With any partnership we do, in particular with one with Facebook, we want to make sure it coincides closely with our editorial goals. And both of these efforts do just that. Figured I'd show an example. Here's a recent one we did during President Donald Trump's recent visit to London. So, claim, aerial video shows massive crowds protesting in London during President Donald Trump's state visit this week. AP's assessment, false. The aerial BBC footage of crowds gathering to protest Trump was taken last year, not this week. The facts. Posts circulating on Twitter and Facebook falsely claim footage of massive anti-Trump protests was taken during the president's visit to meet with Queen Elizabeth II and Prime Minister Theresa May. But it's actually from July 2018. Also, to Tom's earlier point, I should say this is a big thing of what we just report on, not just the fact checks, but also what we're reporting on false information. For example, during the European Union Parliament elections, we reported on the idea, we were trying to get at the idea of what is false, what misleading and misinformation was spreading online. And not surprisingly, it wasn't so much on Facebook and other big social platforms. It was moving to encrypted apps like WhatsApp. And we reported on the idea of how difficult that is for people to know what's going on, but how they present a whole new challenge because people tend to really trust when they're part of a closed group that they've chosen to be a part of. We have also invested heavily into verifying and distributing user-generated content, or UGC. We have skilled journalists around the world who search social media platforms for photos, videos taken by people who witnessed an explosion or a shooting or some other news event. But of course, there are many, many misleading and completely false images out there, and they often spread like wildfire as soon as a big news event happens. So in order to avoid using any false images, news agencies must have rigorous standards. At the AP, we use a variety of tools and technology to make sure images haven't been altered. But we also go beyond that verification. We must contact the person who shot the photo or video that was posted online and verify they actually took it and have them agree to us using the image. This isn't really a simple process like, sure, you can use it, okay. It details into copyright, and so that they have to say that they are the person who took it, they own the copyright to that, and that thus we can distribute it. They agree to the AP distributing explicit agreement that we can distribute that content to our customers and also have it for our archives. We do this in every single case. It takes a lot of time, trust me. But it also ensures that any image or video we use is accurate, and importantly, gives us the legal right to distribute it, which of course is something that will only become more critical as legal issues around copyrights evolve. It's amazing how frequently you can avoid a fake photo or video just by trying to contact the person who posted it and seeing if they'll talk to you. Verified UGC also adds to the credibility of our reporting when journalists are not present to witness a news event. For example, media were not at an airport in northern Moscow when a plane caught fire during an emergency landing recently, but we were able to obtain, verify, and distribute accurate UGC quickly that night that showed the devastation as passengers ran from the burning aircraft. These videos not only captured the drama of what happened, but helped make our coverage more credible. The backbone of all these efforts is accurate reporting, i.e. fact-checking. But how can we do this when the information is murky or confusing, or obtaining the facts is difficult to do? One way to do this is to be as transparent as possible about what we know and what we don't know. And importantly, tap into the expertise of our staff around the world so they can help inform our reporting and give our coverage credibility. I'll give you another recent example here, where solid reporting and local expertise by our staff shined amid murky information. Late last month, there was a report that North Korea had executed several high-level officials. The news spread swiftly on social media, as many outlets reported it, and the news got retweeted and shared. But the news was based on a single anonymous source in one paper, And this immediately caused our reporters, who have deep knowledge of North Korea, to pause. How did we know it was true? Was there any way to know it was true? We couldn't ignore the story, obviously. But instead of reporting solely based on the single anonymous source, the AP took a different approach that highlighted our reporting standards and expertise. I'll just read the lead here so you kind of have an idea. A South Korean newspaper reported Friday that North Korea executed a senior envoy involved in nuclear negotiations with the US, as well as 4 other high-level officials. But as ever with North Korea, a country that closely guards its secrets, there are reasons to be cautious about the purported purge. The story went on to explain that while information could be true, there was a lot of reasons in past experience to suggest it might not be. Days later, one of the officials who'd been reported to be sentenced to hard labor was shown in state media enjoying a concert near leader Kim Jong-un. While we still don't know whether other aspects of the initial report happened, this makes it even more crucial that we explain to our customers and our clients and readers what we know and what we don't know. We have a responsibility to be accurate and fair and put that above everything else. This doesn't mean we always get it right, and when we make mistakes, it's incumbent that we're transparent and quickly correct it. And one really last part I'll mention here, another really crucial effort, is what we do not do. To quote our statement of news values, which, like Tom had mentioned, is that as everything is online and anyone can read it at any time, we at the AP must avoid behavior and activities, political, social, or financial, that create a conflict of interest or compromise our ability to report the news fairly and accurately, uninfluenced by any person or action. Being accurate is not enough. As global news agency journalists, we must be fair and unbiased in our reporting and in our behavior and activities. This is key to maintaining credibility in an increasingly fractured world where everyone wants to point the fingers and blame the media. We must resist temptations to offer our opinions, even as others do. The AP has been around a long time, since 1846 to be precise. We are truly independent, meaning we're not part of a corporation or owned by the government, but we can't rest on this. We must continue to uphold the rigorous standards, as we all must do, and remain steadfast in the commitment to the bedrocks of journalism. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Now, our next speaker for this session is Mr. Siddhartha Dubey. What's the matter with this? Our next speaker for this session is Mr. Siddhartha Dubey, Professor of Journalism at Ashoka University in India. He is a former television He's a former television journalist and has worked in multiple newsrooms around the world for Reuters Television, Dow Jones Television, CNBC Asia, and ET Now. He helped to set up the Brookings India Institution Center in New Delhi. Today, he will give us an insight into the breakdown of trust within Indian media. Please, Sid.
Thank you very much, Fareed, and thank you very much, BTA, to inviting me to this really lovely capital city of Bulgaria. It is 45 degrees in India right now, so I'm really happy to be the relative cool of Sofia. I wanted to focus on India because a lot of people believe that India, and myself as well, is the ground zero of fake news with deadly consequences. Every day, almost. So, as we know, India's general elections ended about 3 weeks ago. A massive 5-week-long exercise where some 900 million people were eligible to vote and elect a parliament and prime minister. Somebody did win, and he will lead the country for the next 5 years, but never mind personalities and politicians. The real winner here was fake news, unfortunately. Journalists and editors in India are in constant battle with the flood of fake, inaccurate, agenda-driven news. Newsrooms are ill-prepared. Some have small fact-checking teams in their editorial. However, most do not. The watershed moment for fake news in India was in November 2016. The pro-Hindu nationalist government, the BJP, overnight declared high-value currency notes worthless. People were given a couple of months to deposit their just-made illegal tender into bank accounts, after which the money really would be just paper. I'm not an economist and will not talk about the demerits or the demerits of this exercise, but what I will say is that the currency ban gave way, encouraged, and brought to life the Frankenstein of fake news. A parallel narrative soon appeared on WhatsApp and Twitter, information ranging from microchips embedded on new notes which replaced the old ones to massive amounts of cash being moved in hours into bank accounts outside of India. It was as if hunters were given fully automatic rifles on a duck shoot, and the truth was a duck. Fake news over demonetization continues. Last year, a pro-opposition Facebook site claimed that India's central bank had accused Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, of wiping out $138 billion from the exchequer. No, the government of the Reserve Bank of India never ever accused his boss, the Prime Minister, of any such thing. My friends who work for fake news busting organizations, which in itself is a busy industry in India, tell me that the single biggest challenge to journalism in India is exactly this. The problem is that it has political backing, which makes it doubly tough to fight. For those of you unfamiliar with India's media scene, there are 105,443 newspapers or periodicals registered with the government's newspaper guild. This is a 4-year-old number, so I expect that number to be higher right now. There are over 100 million copies of newspapers sold every day, the overwhelming majority in languages other than English. India has 902 private satellite channels. About 462 of the country's 1.3 billion people are online. Well over 300 million Indians are active social media users. That number is only climbing. Facebook, it's the most popular venue with 300 million users in 2017-18. LinkedIn has around 241 million users. Twitter, over 23 million users. WhatsApp, 300 million users in India. As you can imagine, India is a huge opportunity for folks like Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and all his Silicon Valley pals. So in brief, that's a rather shallow dive of what's going on in India's growing media market. But back to fake news and the challenges it does present. Out of the 105,000 plus newspapers, an insignificant number have fact-checking teams on board. Those who do, such as the popular Times of India and the India Today magazine, the teams are not well integrated into day-to-day editorial or individual journalists filing stories. Many editors keep fact-checkers at bay and go to them when they need something as opposed to the other way around. On the field, reporters are really on their own, often retweeting, sharing videos and photographs given to them by interested parties. A large majority of journalists joining the profession right now are not trained on how to spot fake news and make basic judgment calls. When fake news busting teams embed themselves in newsroom for training, they often face hostility. Middle-aged editors and correspondents really don't want 20 to 30-something-year-olds telling them what's what. So much of the problem rests with Facebook, WhatsApp, Google, Twitter, and so on. These are for-profit organizations and not in the business of journalism. They do content and don't feel a responsibility up until now. Even then, responsibility is forced upon them and they do the bare minimum. Now I'm talking in the Indian context, okay? Not in a global context. A friend of mine who works closely with Facebook and Google describes their work in India, quote, half-hearted and tepid. What has changed is that they cannot turn a blind eye to misleading and dangerous content on their portals anymore. Some people do recognize what's happening, as public opinion research firm YouGov shows a recent survey of Indian social media users. Almost half the respondents say they resolved on New Year's Day not to believe anything they read on WhatsApp in 2019, sort of like me resolving not to eat dessert in 2019. YouGov collected its data from a study it conducted on online surveys. It surveyed 732 Indians between December 31 and January 03. What I really want to stress here is that fake news is not a new thing in India. We have traditionally been liberal with the facts. It became professionalized in the run-up to the elections, general elections, in 2014, and the BJP party used it with great effect, and it continues to use so. In this election, which just ended, instances of fake news have shot up 40%. This is a figure given to me by Boom and Alt News. Two of them are India's leading fake news busters. What I find unique to the fake news cycle in India is its deadly outcome. In 2017 to 2018, 30 people were lynched to death over rumors associated with child kidnappings. One of the videos responsible for the well-reported lynching is actually an advertisement from Pakistan for missing children and women. In India, this video was edited, doctored, and the social message was cropped out, and the reenactment was highlighted to portray an actual kidnapping of a minor, which was underway. It caused panic and led to armed gangs roaming the countryside, meting out justice to anyone they suspected. Whipping up public hysteria is an effective way to sow fear and gain control. It is an old time and not unique to India or any actually country for that matter. But here's how it's changing in India and how fake news in India is evolving and becoming more sophisticated. Experts say truth and half-truths are mixed in with blatant lies so as to confuse the consumer. This makes it all the more dangerous for the police and courts, and they often shy away from prosecuting the perpetrators of the attacks and those behind the dissemination of misleading and dangerous online content. I'm told the way it works with the ruling party is that it has 20,000 pro-party, what's called amplifiers, who plug the same or similar content on Twitter or WhatsApp. These amplifiers are connected with each other and complement each other's work. A year-old BBC survey on fake news in India said the anti-Modi or anti-BJP accounts are loosely connected and are not closely followed by the Indian National Congress leadership. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, however, and his senior leadership, on the other hand, they follow pro-BJP fake news Twitter handles. A couple of days after the elections, I was reading a story on Bloomberg News which quoted a fact-checker from an Indian agency called Vishwas News, which is subcontracted by Facebook to help them weed out bogus content. The lady from Vishwas said most people have no clue about bogus content and they share stuff without thinking twice about it. Here in Europe, a firm called Avaz says there are over 500 suspect EU-related Facebook pages and groups which are followed by nearly 32 million people. Imagine the frequency and shares of conversations built up around these accounts. Germany, France, Poland, Spain are all target areas of fake news accounts. Two experts at Singapore's Nanyang Technological University have looked into how fake news versus real news spread on Twitter. One key difference from the Singapore team is that the time a story continues to be shared after its first publication. They observed that while real news seems to lose its value after a day, fake news sustains its popularity and gets shared at a much more rapid rate. Policymakers around the world agree that they have to combat fake news. While reading a 6-year-old World Economic Forum paper titled Global Risks Report, I noticed the phrase digital wildfires, which occur online basically to spread information rapidly. It's as if a forest fire began just outside Sofia and spread all over Europe, to the United States, to India in a matter of hours or even less. How do you battle that? Who's in charge? Who has the resources? I have no idea. I hope my students do at Ashoka University, but I'm thrilled to be here in your lovely city and learn from colleagues who are all much smarter than me. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Sid.
Thank you.
And now our next speaker is Mr. Eric Wishart. a former AFP editor-in-chief. He is a member of the agency's global news management team. He is also a part-time journalism lecturer at Hong Kong Baptist University and has a wealth of knowledge on how young journalists approach different formats within the media. Today, he will talk to us about strengthening trust and fighting disinformation with the AFP approach. Please, Eric.
Thank you. Can I have the clip?
This one?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fareed, and I'm delighted to be speaking to such a distinguished international audience. I hope my Glasgow accent is not too difficult, but I'll try to speak fairly slowly. So from an AFP perspective, I would say the fight against fake news and disinformation, we basically break it into 4 general areas, a time when technology has completely transformed the news ecosystem. First of all, trust. Trust is a big issue, and this is something we take very seriously, and I'll come back to that. Second, and we were talking about partnerships this morning, partnering with big tech and other players to develop tools and other weapons against fake information is a key part of the strategy, and developing our fact-checking network. Of course, as I think Anna said, fact-checking is part of a journalist's daily work, but with social media and so much fake news being spread in such a toxic political environment in many countries, fact-checking is taken on a whole different dimension. And finally, and I think to me, I mean, if there's a lead, as we would say as a journalist, I think media literacy is really the key on an education level. You know, you can fact-check as much as you like, but I think it's essential that people from a young age, and we're talking primary school, understand the importance of truth. So, hoaxes have always existed. Fake news has always existed. But of course, the spread of them has been accelerated with technology. And to sort of slightly paraphrase Marshall McLuhan, the medium has not always been the message. Has not always been the message. This is actually a photograph from 1840 of an AFP dispatch being attached to a carrier pigeon. So, you know, it was much more difficult to spread fake news in these days. And this was Charles Havas's idea, who formed AFP, of how to beat trains and other forms of transport. So we used to send our stories by carrier pigeon. So I think, first of all, how do you fight the failing trust in the media? And what we did in AFP, unlike probably AP and Reuters, we always used to keep our editorial guidelines internal. So in 2016, in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo attacks, actually, I was asked to draw up a new ethics charter. So I've actually produced 4 documents. AFP charter, which is like our guiding principles, what we call AFP editorial standards and best practices, which is the ethics code, which I wrote, which is in French, English, Spanish, and Arabic. And I also wrote AFP's 20 principles of sourcing. And it's taken me about 1.5 years. Tom, I think you dedicated your career to this stuff. So I've just finished the AFP style book. And for the first time, we're going to put this online, freely available. And the idea behind this is basically why... I had lunch with Alan Rusbridger, the former Guardian editor, quite recently, and he analysed it quite well. Before journalists, we worked in a vertical world. We came down and we told people, we're journalists, this is the news, you've got to believe us. This doesn't work anymore. He says we're now operating in a horizontal environment where anybody can upload content. But if you come to AP, Reuters, AFP, other trusted news outlets, if someone says, well, why should we believe that photograph isn't fake, or that video, or that story, we can refer them to these editorial guidelines and the fake news players don't have ethics codes. So I think to re-establish trust, I think it's very important to be as transparent as possible in your news gathering techniques and to put all this kind of material online. So moving to partnerships, I would say our partnerships divide into technical partnerships and also fact-checking partnerships. And we were part of this INVID project, which developed an online platform for, how am I doing here? Sorry. Yeah, okay, sorry. I've got to go back, okay. So this is a verification platform to assess the reliability of newsworthy video files and content spread via social media. And this was one of the classic early ones. This was supposed to be Osama bin Laden. This is really kind of primary school level fake news, but this was supposed to be a photograph of Osama bin Laden after he was killed on I think, an army helicopter, an army plane, where in fact, of course, it was a scene from a film. This is very basic. This one I love. This was circulated. This was under the headline, Vladimir Putin, Tsar of the World. The only slight problem was he wasn't there. Okay. So, but a lot of people saw this. So we developed these verification tools in partnership. So coming to fact-checking, which has become quite a growth industry, in fact. In 2012, we were partners in the formation of Africa Check, which has been very successful, actually, in Africa. And we have an English and a French version now. And it was based in South Africa. And this was mainly, I would say, fact-checking political statements, political claims, more than fake news, at least at the start. This is the AFP network. It's the world, like, as Anna showed our AP network. We're all the same. Reuters is the same. We're everywhere. We've got about 40 journalists dedicated to fact-checking in the regional hubs. Washington for North America, Montevideo for Latin America. Actually, in Beirut, we've just started fact-checking in Arabic. Obviously, Paris, the headquarters. And in Hong Kong is the regional headquarters for Asia Pacific. In addition to that, we have a very active training program in our bureaus so that all journalists can fact-check a piece of uploaded content. Because I say, news agencies used to be the first with the news. Now, so often, the first videos go online from eyewitnesses. And so as part of our news gathering, half of the job now is verifying online content. So our journalists are trained to be able to verify that as part of their actual jobs as reporters. So we have a fact-checking network which extends to all the continents. We're a member, again, coming back to partnerships, and I think this is something that is important for everybody from a media here is you can't do this on your own. You have to partner up. So we're a member of the First Draft Coalition, which is headed up by Claire Wardle, which is a non-profit. And they specialise in teaching verification of uploaded content, and also with First Draft and the Google News Lab as a partner here, we do focused projects. The first one we did was for the French presidential election. We called it Crosscheck. And these are just some of the partners we had. And I was actually a bit skeptical about it because I thought, are we going to get much fake news in France? The very first day, an AFP graphic of the presidential candidates appeared online with an extra candidate added out of the blue. So I think the very first fact check we did for this was an AFP graphic. So it was that fast, and that was France. So it was quite successful. This is just an example of how we did it. Did Emmanuel Macron open an offshore account? It's false. And one of the questions is who fact checks the checkers. So, I mean, we shared out these fact checks. So we would say, for example, this was cross-checked or fact-checked by, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, say 8 or 9 different media organizations. So they couldn't just say this was just AFP or whoever. It was, I think the more people involved, the more credibility you have in this case. And this was put on a website, it was shared on social media, and it had quite an impact, actually. The latest project is called Reverso. It's in Argentina. It's the biggest ever fact-checking project, as well as we know, as much as we know. There's more than 100 partners, and it's been launched for the elections in Argentina in October 2019. So this is a massive operation, because there's a real fear in Argentina they're going to be bombarded with fake news and disinformation. It's organized by 4 of us. Chicago is an Argentine fact-checking site, AFP First Draft in the pop-up newsroom. And it's supported by, and again, you have to work with big tech. I mean, I know Facebook comes in for criticism, but there's the Facebook Journalism Project, Google News Initiative, WhatsApp, which is, as we know, is part of Facebook, and also Luminate, which was created by the founder of eBay. So, so a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnerships, and I think this is definitely the way to go. So AFP and Facebook, this is a question that always comes up. What's our relationship with Facebook? We have a commercial relationship with Facebook. They pay us to do fact checks. That's basically it. The way it works, and we work independent of Facebook. We're editorially independent of Facebook. We have they give us a feed of content that is suspect. Maybe, as it says, the stories were flagged by artificial intelligence or Facebook users as potentially false. Through this partnership, it's enabled us to create a network of fact checkers in 21 countries now. The latest is Polish. And if we rate a story false, Facebook takes action. Users are less likely to see the post as it loses much of its distribution in the newsfeed. If users do see the post, immediately below it, they will also see the fact check as a related article. So we'll post a story saying this is fake. And the page administrators receive a notification and a warning about publishing misinformation. If a Facebook page or website repeatedly shares misinformation, Facebook reduces the overall distribution of the page or website, not just individual false articles. They also cut off their ability to make money or advertise. Why doesn't Facebook just take that content off? If you want an answer to that, ask Mark Zuckerberg. But that's their policy. But as I say, it's enabled us to develop this fact-checking network. This is the kind of, we have a site, it's called AFP Fact Check, and this is the kind of thing we would put up. Video of Hong Kong police shooting female protester, false. And then we explain video footage. I don't like reading to the slide, but I will. Video footage has been viewed tens of thousands of times in multiple posts on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, which claim it shows Hong Kong police shooting a woman at a protest in June 2019. It's fake. Video shows one police officer pointing his baton at the woman before another officer detonates a tear gas canister, prompting the woman to move away. This was during I think we talked about the yellow vest, the Gilets jaunes movement yesterday, and this was a photograph claiming that they'd set up a guillotine at the Louvre, but it was false. And so we send Facebook our assessment of whether it's fake or not, and they'll flag it the way I explained. We also put it on our fact-checking sites, which exist now, I think, in French, Spanish, Portuguese, English, Arabic. This is just, if you clicked on this story, you would see, this is a fake story, you would see additional reporting on this, visit AFP Africa, and you click, okay, and that takes you to the Facebook, to the AFP fact check. So if you see what I mean. So if you clicked on this, it would be flagged as, it doesn't actually say fake, it just says this has been, you might want to know there's additional reporting on this, and you click to continue. That would take you to the AFP fact check. Next. And as I said, the Facebook algorithm sort of squashes the fake content online. Finally, education outreach, media literacy, which I think is absolutely key. AFP has a partnership with Hong Kong University Journalism School. And again, I would recommend that you develop partnerships with journalism schools and also secondary education. If you ever come to Hong Kong, this is where it's based, this nice old building in fairly central Hong Kong. In partnership, the slide's not great there, but in partnership with Hong Kong Journalism School, we translated the ethics code, which I wrote, we translated it into simplified Chinese. Again, it's available online. And also, we also have a partnership with a secondary school in Hong Kong called South Island School. And in other countries, we work very closely with education in France. I just threw that one up. That was me doing an interview when my hair was a bit shorter. So that's at a secondary school level. So anyway, to sum up, I could talk about this all day. So I would say the three key areas are transparency and editorial procedures to establish trust. It's no longer good enough to say trust us because I'm AFP or whoever. That doesn't work anymore. You get, you know, and I think people will understand partnerships in fighting disinformation, including developing verification tools and fact-checking like the Argentina project, and also promoting media literacy and outreach to education, and actually explaining to young people how to actually not get caught into the fake news trap. It's not that difficult, actually, you know. So these are, I would say, that's our basic three principles when it comes to fact checking. That's me. I'm quite active about this on Twitter, and as I always say, if you follow me, I promise I'll follow you back. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Our next or last speaker is, or one speaker plus one, is Mr. Alexander Karishenko. He is the Director Yeah. What's the matter? He headed previously Ukraine's largest privacy-owned news agency for 13 years. He has also worked in the leading Ukrainian print media newspaper, chief of all Ukrainian newspapers and magazines. He is working in journalism since 35 years. Please.
A little bit about news laundering. I would like to compare some of the threats that we as news agencies currently face to a simple and understandable phenomenon. When we talk about all the disinformation, misinformation, fake news, clickbait, and other challenges to our profession, it's difficult to not see all those trends as a kind of corruption. And usually part of ordinary corrupt practices around the globe is money laundering. As dirty money can be legalized and laundered, the same way the dirty news can be laundered too. And as we recognize that money laundering is a crime, we should recognize that news laundering is a crime too. We need to take serious steps to tackle corruption in information space. It's obvious that the more reputable a medium for delivering those efforts is, the more effective will those actions be. A story posted on an unknown blog, doubtful media or social media platform wins much less trust than the one published by a reputable media. However, there are ways to push information from margins to mainstream. For example, if we talk about our country, our nearest neighbor, Russia, frequently in our information confrontation uses the following scheme. Realizing that a certain story will be put in doubt or published in Russian media, it seeks for ways to publish it in Western media, even if not the most reputable ones. One such example is the story of the so-called Georgian snipers shooting on Euromaidan during after revolution. Authors created a documentary film where they hired actors to sit in front of the camera and confess as if they are those Georgian snipers, and they received orders to shoot at protesters to provoke bloodshed. Of course, later the story was found to be made up. It's illustrated that this fake investigation originated not from a Russian media source, but from an Italian newspaper. The story was quite soon proven fake by a number of Western media, but it go its way. Instead of being tied to the Russia, it got labeled as Italian journalists proved that. Certainly this is its way to raise legitimacy and to say London news. Many other examples around the world show how all types of conspiracy theories, misinformation and disinformation pave their way from unknown social media users to mainstream media. Such case, when Donald Trump became president, there were quite many critics of him on Twitter. Few profiles were especially popular, posting many conspiracy theories on Trump's alleged ties with Russians and getting thousands of shares. They were not journalists, but an ex-deputy of British Parliament and ex-special agent and photographer. With their popularity growing, their information got wider outreach. At some point, they became so visible that the New York Times gave platform to one of them, Louise Mensch. Despite her more than doubtful background and the long story of sharing unverified theories on Trump-Russian scandal, Mensch got a tribune in the highly reputable newspaper, therefore legitimizing her theories. How can we stop these corrupt practices? First and foremost, we believe that there needs to be created a system, national or international, of media reputation ratings. Not only should such system be created, but also it should be visible to a user surfing through the streams of links online. On Ukraine, for example, we have a highly authoritative Institute of Mass Information, a media watchdog which monitors on a regular basis various outlets and examines how many misleading, fake or prepared stories they posted. Then it publishes ratings. We firmly believe that letting governments regulate internet is not the best idea. So we need to create self-regulation and rating system which would be fair and serve the public's best interest. Implement the public's right to be informed, not only with news, but also with understanding where they come from. Generally, we need to create authoritative ratings of media based on their reputation and find way to indicate ranks visually just in the news feeds on social media. This would also motivate various outlets to care for their reputation. This would make cost of mistakes higher as well as responsibility. This would certainly add a lot to transparency. And as we perfectly know, transparency and informed public are two best ways to tackle corruption, but it's money laundering or not news laundering. Today we really don't know which of two are worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you to all our speakers for the insightful topics they discussed. They dealt with some of the global challenges concerning fake news and how organizations can tackle it. Now we have about 10 minutes to close the session, and the distinguished speakers are ready to answer any questions.
Thank you very much to all our speakers for an excellent session. My question was for Eric. Eric, you talked about your style guide and the fact that you've spent a lot of time producing a style guide. I know from networking with other agencies that the Associated Press also has a style guide, and that is a very successful business for the Associated Press. They've generated a lot of money. So my question to you would be, why have you decided to make it free, and are you comfortable with that given that your agency is supported by the French government, so you don't run on a commercial basis? So aren't you distorting the marketplace for these guides?
We do work, Clive, as you know, on a commercial basis. We get 40% of our revenue from the French government. And this was under agreement with the European Commission. 20% is through subscriptions from government departments like the Foreign Ministry. 20% is to finance what we have called mission of public interest, which is in our statute. So we are obliged, and it was interesting, yesterday part of the discussion was why do uneconomic coverages? Well, you have to. You know, the big international news agencies have to be agencies of record. You can't just not cover a country because, you know, it might not be worth it. So part of our revenue from the government is to cover the cost, of covering these uneconomic coverages. The other 60% comes from commercial businesses, you know. Why do we put our style book online? I mean, the AP style book is will be quite a different animal from the AP one. I mean, I personally subscribe to the AP style book, by the way, so I'm one of your clients, you know. So, I mean, Reuters puts its ethics codes online. I mean, most people do put their ethics codes online for free, actually. I mean, I've got a lot of admiration for the AP, but it's quite more developed. I mean, we're going to do a straight A to Z style book, but there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of, I find there's a lot of interest, particularly also in educational institutions to have access to this. Yeah.
I can jump in a bit on the AP style book, but I will say, so our ethics and our news standards and values are online and free for anyone to look at. The style book, of course, is something we, you know, do sell, and it's I will say on just sort of the interest in it, though. So every time when we're constantly updating it, we have a team that looks at it. Tom can certainly talk a lot about this, but you know, we have a team that constantly is looking at things, taking in new information. The world is changing. How do we, you know, look at what we might describe something or call something? I mean, you know, the more than over debate is still going on. So, and I will say, anytime that we do have an update, we do. The interest is exceptionally high, and we do a lot of campaigning on Instagram, and we have an AP style book on, you know, Instagram account, and the interactions are quite fascinating to see. I mean, recently, probably the biggest thing was that we can now use % signs instead of spelling it out. So, woohoo, good for headlines. But it also, I mean, it's things like that that are very specific to grammar or things, but then it does dive into standards as well, and how do we name someone, not name someone, you know, what to take into consideration when you're talking about certain circumstances or about gender, about race, you know, about sexual orientation, that type of things. So it can also dive into the standards as opposed to just sort of some of the grammar rules. It's a bit of both. But
how big is your team, Anna? How many people work on the style book?
That's a good question. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, the Instagram account. Oh gosh, at the AP, within it, there's a core group of people. Some of them are current. I mean, they're in the editorial department. They meet once a week, once every 2 weeks, to discuss matters of style. I don't know the exact number of people on the team, but they meet all the time, and it's quite regular, ongoing, and really dynamic conversation.
Is there any other questions?
شفيق العبيدي مدير وكالة الأنباء العراقية. سؤالي موجه إلى السيد رئيس الجلسة الدكتور فريد أيار، كون أكثر قرباً لواقع الصحافة العربية. هناك معلومات تساق إلينا على شكل بيانات رسمية، أي من مؤسسات رسمية، وهي أخبار كاذبة.
Data coming from official organizations that are misleading. We are aware of the misleading nature of this data. Their objective is to sway the political sentiment in one direction or another. But what are we doing actually? We are promoting these fake news by giving a source for them. What is your advice how to approach situations like this?
I will answer my colleague later because he is talking about something belong to Iraq, I think, and I will answer him because I know what is the situation there in Iraq. Thank you.
I would just add also, just by the way, under this partnership with Facebook, we've started an Arab fact-checking operation in Arabic based out of Beirut.
My name is Muhammad from Iranian Mehr News Agency and Tehran Times. I think some of the issues raised here were very general. Anyway, I have a question about the best reaction in front of fake news and fake medias exactly. For example, about the happening in our region, I mean southwest of Asia. Some West medias try to change truth with the help of some fake news that published by fake sources. So these happenings don't lead to public opinion that understand the truth and cause some mistake decisions. Like US Brian Hook tweet about Iranian missiles that he said these missiles are Photoshop photos. So may you say, okay, it is the public opinions issue, but I say this is not only their issue, but also is our duty as an official and creditable media to show truth. Because all of crimes in the world happen in the context of fake news, I think. Anyway, I ask you, Mr. Chairman, and another speakers, what do we do about this important issue if we want to have a better world? Because I think a lot of crimes in the world, like crimes in Yemen, crimes in Syria, crimes in Afghanistan, happen in context of the fake news at the base. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'll take a stab at that. So again, in India, where, as I said, fake news is a huge problem with deadly outcomes, there is an industry of fake news busters, Boom News and Alt News, both based in Bombay. They are run by ex-journalists, or you can still journalists, very senior editors, and they live and breathe to bust fake news. And as I said earlier, it is politically driven, not by just one party, by all parties, especially regional parties, business groups who have money interests. So they work to do that. The question is, I think, is that who's going to win the race? Because to boil it down in a super crude way, the bad guys have more resources than the good guys. So it's a constant challenge. But at least in places like India, Brazil, Mexico, United States, big countries with huge conversations, there is a consistent effort. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It doesn't directly answer your question, but I think beyond fake news and disinformation, I think one thing that journalists are extremely guilty of is following the same narrative. Donald Trump can't win the American election. The British are not going to vote to leave Europe. And of course, the Trump collusion, there was this sudden kind of soul-searching when the Mueller report came out, initially at least when Barr gave his conclusions, that my colleague over here, the coverage that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction in the run-up to the war in 2003, which proved to be totally false, but a lot of Western media, British and American media in particular, jumped on that particular bandwagon. So I think even if you're not promoting fake news, I think journalists have really got to be careful not to fall into this narrative. We're all pushing the same narrative. And I think you can mislead your readers and the public by not being critical enough and not looking at enough sides to the story. So, and I mean, as I said, I mean, the New York Times did this mea culpa a year after the war in Iraq, saying that the reporting just followed this weapons of mass destruction narrative and was a factor in swaying public support behind that war. So I think we have to be careful. Don't follow a narrative.
Thank you, Sid. Thank you, Eric. Really, it is a very important subject. We can discuss about 2-3 hours more, but I am forced to close the session now. It is 2 o'clock. Thank you very much for all, and the session is closed. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Worked out fine.
Good. Yeah.
I'm having a great time.
Good luck.
Fareed, thanks so much.
Oh. Now it's...
That's what I discovered. So now watch. Right? See? Now watch.
Yeah, only one.
Only one.
Very much interested in your